My wife ran away with my brother while I was in the hospital fighting for my life. Exactly 1 year later, I was the one standing over their grave. I watched them lower my brother's casket into the ground first, then hers right beside it. The rain was biblical that day, like God himself wanted to wash away what they'd done. My hands didn't shake. I thought they would, but they didn't. I stood there in my black suit, the same one I'd worn to our wedding 8 years ago, and felt nothing but the weight of the last 12 months crushing down on me like tectonic plates shifting. Let me back up. Exactly 1 year ago, I was dying. Not metaphorically dying like people say when they're stressed about work or arguing with their spouse. Dying. Stage 3 testicular cancer that had spread to my lymph nodes and lungs. The doctors gave me a 40% chance if I started aggressive chemo immediately. I remember calling Sarah from the hospital bed after getting the diagnosis, my voice cracking like I was 16 again. She cried with me on the phone, promised she'd be there within the hour. That was the last time I heard genuine emotion in her voice. The chemo was. If you've never experienced it, imagine someone pouring battery acid through your veins while simultaneously beating you with a baseball bat from the inside. I couldn't keep water down. My hair fell out in clumps. I went twice because I couldn't make it to the bathroom in time. But Sarah was there. Every day, she was there. Holding my hand, reading to me, bringing me ice chips. My younger brother Marcus would visit too, bringing takeout Sarah liked, offering to handle my business affairs while I was laid up. They were so attentive. So caring. So good at pretending. I found out about them by accident. It was week 6 of treatment, and I'd had a good day. Kept down some soup, walked a lap around the ward without stopping. The nurse said I could try going home for a night if someone could watch me. I wanted to surprise Sarah, thought maybe we could just lie in our bed together, watch Netflix, pretend things were normal for a few hours. I took an Uber home because I didn't want to bother anyone. Our bedroom door was closed. I heard her laugh first, that specific giggle she used to do when we were dating, when everything was new and electric. Then I heard Marcus say something I couldn't make out, followed by sounds that didn't need interpretation. I stood in my hallway, bald head pressed against the wall, chemo port still accessed under my shirt, listening to my wife and my brother in our bed. I didn't burst in. Didn't scream. I was too tired for drama, too sick for confrontation. I just walked to the kitchen, sat at our table, and waited. 20 minutes later, Marcus walked out first, shirtless, heading to the bathroom. He saw me and froze. The color drained from his face so fast I thought he might faint. Sarah came out 30 seconds later wearing my old college t-shirt, the one she always wore after we made love. She saw Marcus frozen in the hallway, followed his gaze to me, and that's when I saw it. No surprise. No shock. Just resignation, like she'd been caught skipping work, not destroying our marriage. How long? That's all I asked. 4 months, she said. No apology. No excuse. Just the facts. 4 months. I'd been sick for 6 weeks. They'd been for 4 months. Before the cancer. Before I was dying. Before they had any excuse at all. Marcus tried to stammer something about not meaning for it to happen, about being sorry, about wanting to explain. I told him to get out. I told them both to get out. Sarah packed a bag in silence while Marcus dressed. She stopped at the door, turned back like she wanted to say something profound, then just left. They both just left. I sat in that kitchen until sunrise, too exhausted to cry, too numb to rage. Then I called my lawyer. Not for divorce proceedings. For something else entirely. See, what Sarah and Marcus didn't know was that my oncologist had called that morning with good news. The tumors were shrinking faster than expected. My blood work was improving dramatically. I was responding to treatment better than anyone anticipated. I was going to live. And that's when I decided that they wouldn't. Not the way you're thinking. I'm not a violent man. Never thrown a punch in my life. But I knew Marcus better than anyone. I knew his weaknesses, his addictions, his triggers. He'd been sober for 3 years, but had nearly killed him once before. And Sarah? Sarah had her emens. Prescription pills from an old back injury that she'd barely kicked 2 years ago. They'd found each other in their shared weakness, but I was about to remind them why those weaknesses existed in the first place. The divorce was quick. Sarah didn't contest anything, probably out of guilt or maybe because Marcus had promised her his money instead. I gave her everything she wanted, the house, the car, half my savings. I wanted her to feel like she'd won. I needed them both comfortable, confident, and careless. My treatment continued, and I told everyone who asked that I was handling the separation well, that I just wanted to focus on getting better. My oncologist was amazed at my progress. Whatever you're doing for stress management, keep it up, he said. If only he knew that planning their destruction was better than any meditation. Marcus and Sarah went public with their relationship 2 months after the divorce. Posted it on Facebook like they were teenagers. Sometimes love finds you in unexpected places. The comments were brutal. Our mutual friends tore them apart. My mother called Marcus to tell him he was dead to her. But they persevered, clinging to each other like survivors of a shipwreck they'd caused themselves. I started my work slowly. Marcus had been avoiding his old crowd since getting clean, but I knew where they drank. I started showing up at his old bar, buying rounds for his former dealers, talking about how well Marcus was doing, how happy he seemed, how he'd mentioned missing the old days. It took 3 weeks before one of them reached out to him. Just a friendly text. Then an invitation to catch up. Marcus was lonely, isolated from family, clinging to a relationship built on betrayal. He was vulnerable. For Sarah, I took a different approach. I knew her doctor, the one who'd taken her off OxyContin when she'd started showing drug-seeking behavior. I made an appointment, discussed my cancer pain, how I couldn't tolerate the medication, and how I had nearly full bottles I didn't know what to do with. He recommended I dispose of them properly. I assured him I would. Then I started leaving them places I knew Sarah would find them when she and Marcus inevitably started having problems. Because here's what people don't understand about relationships that start with cheating: they're built on a foundation of mistrust. Every time Marcus came home late, Sarah wondered. Every time Sarah was on her phone, Marcus questioned her. The honeymoon phase lasted exactly 3 months before the cracks started showing. They'd moved into an apartment together, away from judging eyes, but isolation only magnified their issues. I watched from a distance, recovering from my last round of chemo, getting stronger while they got weaker. Marcus started using it again in month 4. Just weekends at first, he probably told himself. Sarah found his stash, and instead of leaving, she decided to join him. Trauma bonding, maybe. Or just two broken people breaking each other further. By month 6, they were both fully relapsed. The thing about addiction is that it's patient. It doesn't care if you've been clean for 3 years or 3 days. It welcomes you back like an old friend and then proceeds to destroy everything you've built. Marcus lost his job first. Sarah followed 2 weeks later when she showed up high to her shift at the hospital where she worked as a nurse. They burned through savings, sold possessions, and borrowed from anyone still willing to answer their calls. I got the call on a Tuesday morning, exactly 11 months after finding them in my bed. Double fentanyl lace. They'd been found by their landlord after complaints about a smell. They'd been dead for 3 days, lying together on a mattress on the floor of an apartment they were 2 months behind on rent for. The coroner said they'd likely died within minutes of each other. I identified both bodies. Marcus looked peaceful, almost like he was sleeping. Sarah's eyes were still open, staring at nothing, the way she'd stared through me that last night in our kitchen. I signed the paperwork, arranged for cremation, no notified families. I played the part of the grieving ex-husband and brother. No one suspected anything. Why would they? I'd been fighting cancer, focused on my survival. The investigator ruled it an accident. Just 2 more casualties of the opioid epidemic. Case closed. The funeral was small. Most people couldn't reconcile mourning them after what they'd done. Sarah's parents came, looking older than I remembered, broken by their daughter's choices. Marcus's sponsor from NA gave a short speech about the disease of addiction, how it could claim anyone. I stood in the back, accepting condolences from people who didn't know whether to treat me as a mourner or a victim. My mother grabbed my arm after the service, pulled me aside with tears in her eyes. "I'm sorry you had to go through all of this," she said. "First the cancer, then the betrayal, now this. No one deserves that much pain." I survived, I told her. It was the truest thing I'd said in months. 6 months have passed since the funeral. My cancer is in full remission. The doctors call me their miracle patient. I've returned to work, started dating again, and rebuilt relationships that Sarah and Marcus had damaged. I sleep through the night without nightmares. I don't feel guilty. I don't feel much of anything when I think about them, which isn't often. But sometimes, usually at 3 a.m. when the world is quiet and the darkness feels absolute, I think about that night in the hospital when I made my decision. I wonder what would have happened if I'd just confronted them, screamed, fought, divorced Sarah and Marcus off like a normal person would. They'd probably still be alive. Maybe happy. Maybe they were in love and not just 2 selfish people drawn together by their worst impulses. Then I remember the sound of Sarah's laugh from our bedroom while I was dying. I remember Marcus bringing her takeout while planning to visit her after visiting ours. I remember 4 months of lying face down while I was fighting for my life. And I know, with the kind of certainty that comes from surviving something that should have killed you, that I did exactly what needed to be done. People always say the best revenge is living well. They're wrong. The best revenge is being the last one standing, watching from a distance as the people who betrayed you destroy themselves with the weapons you carefully placed in their hands. It's knowing that every choice they made after betraying you was still somehow about you, still under your control. I keep a photo from our wedding day in my desk drawer. Not out of nostalgia or pain, but as a reminder. In it, Sarah is radiant in white, Marcus is standing beside me as my best man, and I'm grinning like an idiot who believes in forever. All 3 of us are looking at the camera, but if you look closely, you can see Sarah's eyes drifting toward Marcus. Even then. Even at our beginning, she was looking at our end. The cancer taught me something valuable. Sometimes the thing that's trying to get you isn't what you think it is. Sometimes it's been there all along, dormant, waiting for the right moment to metastasize. Sarah and Marcus were my real cancer. The radiation and chemo just gave me clarity about what needed to be out. I visit their grave on the anniversary of finding them together. Not to mourn or forgive, but to remind myself of what I'm capable of when pushed to the edge. The headstone is simple, shared to save costs that no one wanted to pay. Together forever, it reads. I picked the inscription myself. They wanted to be together. I made sure they would be. Forever is a long time to spend with someone who helped you destroy everything good in your life. But then again, I've got a lifetime ahead of me to not think about it. My oncologist says I've got decades if I keep taking care of myself. Funny thing about surviving cancer, it makes you appreciate every single day you're alive to see the people who wronged you aren't. I'm not proud of what I did. But I'm not sorry either. They made their choices. I just made sure those choices had consequences. And if that makes me a monster, at least I'm a monster who's still breathing, still standing at their grave with steady hands and a clear conscience, winning a game they didn't know we were playing. The rain has stopped now. The cemetery is empty except for me and the groundskeeper, waiting to close the gates. I turn away from their grave for the last time, knowing I'll never come back. There's nothing left here for me but proof that sometimes, when someone takes everything from you, the only thing left to do is make sure they lose everything too. My cancer is gone. So are they. I'd call that a fair trade.